Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back. So Path of Exile 2, I realize 7 of my last 10 uploads have been about this game. I'm not addicted. You're addicted, okay? That's the problem. Today's a pretty massive day because finally, after their long winter hibernation that GGG went into, like pretty much immediately after releasing the game, they're like, hey guys, here's Path of Exile 2. It's gonna have some issues, but peace, see you later. It's time for the holidays, which, you know, God bless them by all means. Enjoy your time off. I'm sure you were working really hard leading up to the release. But anyways, after that long hiatus, they have finally returned and they are here bearing some updates, some plans for their immediate patches and the things that they're going to be addressing here in the not too distant future. So that's what we're going to take a look at today.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. Well, we're back from our break. We've been playing the game a whole lot and we've been reading a whole lot of feedback as well. So it's time to assess and work out what we're going to do next. Now, later this week we'll be releasing PoE 2 0.1.1. This is a patch designed to address the concerns that we can address relatively quickly without needing to create a new league or a new economy just yet. In this video we'll be going over some of the issues we've identified and what we're planning on doing about them.
So it looks like they weren't just taking a break. It seems like a lot of the team were actually playing the game over the course of this past month. I guess not too surprising. You can kind of tell by the way this game is crafted that the developers, at least some of them, are actively playing. It is very much so a gamers kind of a game. And then also the fact that they are specifically mentioning that they're not going to be doing a league reset or anything to impact the economy. So I guess they're just kind of leaving things as is, even with all of the issues that were brought up from the exploits and the duping bugs or the strength of magic find. I mean, I'll be interested to see if they address any of that here, even though they're not going to be doing a reset.
It's worth stressing that just because a specific issue isn't on this list doesn't mean that we're not aware of it or that it isn't going to get addressed. It just means that we either can't fix the problem quickly or we can't do so without the need for a new economy. One of the major areas that needs a lot of attention is the base experience of mapping. We've made a lot of changes here. First, in-game maps have received a balance pass to the number of monsters, number of chests, number of magical rare monsters, number of essences, strongboxes, and precursor artifacts. You should generally find maps more rewarding than before. Maps generally specialize in one or more of these elements that they will be particularly rewarding in.
Okay, so that is actually really, really good news. It sounds like they're going to be just baseline juicing up the maps across the board. You know, over the past few weeks, during the time that I've been mapping, I've been going through that process of, you know, going to the maps that don't have a lot of league mechanics on them and just using kind of basic waystones. And in that process, like going into those maps, it is almost unbelievable how barren they feel. They feel like there's absolutely nothing going on. There's like nothing in there. Like I swear sometimes I've gone into these maps and there's been like 3 rare packs. I don't know what the actual numbers, but it's felt very, very barren at times. So it seems like even the base level maps are going to be a little more interesting now, which is great.
Now, towers are a thing that's very important for players to run often, but we only had 1 of them. We wanted to add more variety here as soon as possible, so we've added 4 more tower maps.
Oh my God, yes, thank you so much. There's more than just the one jungle tower where you're going from this room to room and half the time you can't see what you're walking into in the room, which early on meant actually getting one shot on occasion. Nowadays, that's not so much a problem, but there's actually more variety in the towers now, 4 additional towers. And you can see one of them right here.
We wanted to add more variety here as soon as possible, so we've added 4 more tower maps. Alpine Ridge, Sinking Spire, Bluff, and Mesa. We've also redone the existing Lost Towers map to make playing there less boring.
Oh my God, this is so huge. Okay, so not only are we getting 4 additional towers, which is going to bring more variety, but you can see here they've changed the existing towers and they said to make it less boring. But I think the first thing that immediately stands out to me is the fact that we're no longer walking into these covered rooms where we can't see the enemy count, the density, the placement, whatever the heck's going on. As you push in the late game, it's not as much of an issue because you're pretty much just blowing everything up instantly in there anyways. But early on, when you first start progressing, you would just sometimes walk into one-shots. Like you would walk into a bunch of enemies throwing down a bunch of chaos damage on the ground, and it popped the second you walked in the room and could see what was even happening. Looks like they've addressed that by just getting rid of those roofs, and now we can actually see the enemies as we're approaching them. So this is great. Really, really good stuff.
We're now also spawning more maps with bosses. The rate was intended to be 1 in 4 maps, but in reality the rate was much lower due to some maps being unable to spawn bosses.
Oh my God. Yes, this is so great. This is like W after W here. Listen, I'm not one to say like I don't think it needs to be the case that bosses need to be on every map. I mean, I wouldn't hate it, honestly. Definitely, I liked going to boss maps, especially because bosses seem to always drop a lot of stuff. Like you'd get multiple tier 15 maps, you usually get some decently high value currencies, and you'd get a few higher tier level of actual item drops. And now looking at this, I mean, this is way more abundant than what I am used to typically seeing when I'm running maps. Like, yes, he's right.
We're also adding a new type of tablet that allows you to add bosses to your maps with its own mod pool.
Oh, yes, dude, we're fucking getting boss tablets now. Because right now we've had tablets for everything but bosses, basically. Like you'd have the breach one, you'd have the ritual one, you'd have the delirium one, and then you would have a radiation, which bumps the level of all the enemies in a map by one. Now there's actually going to be boss tablets. So if you want to just be bossing, now you can actually focus on that by putting the precursor tablets into your towers to get more bosses around you. In addition to the fact that there are now just going to be a lot more bosses, about one in every 4 maps is what they're aiming for with these new adjustments that they're making. So across the board, if you like fighting bosses while you're mapping, you're going to be fighting a whole heck of a lot more bosses while you're mapping now with these updates.
Strongboxes also needed some love. They now spawn monsters faster, have a less annoying fog effect, and have also received changes to the timings and effects of the mods on them.
I think this is a good change. I think even with monsters spawning faster, like I guess I'll just have to see how it actually plays out when we're in the game, but they still just don't even feel like, some of these league mechanics just don't feel like worth the time unless you're specifically going after like a particular currency that comes from those mechanics. Pretty much anything but breach I'm not really doing. Like breaching and bossing, those are the only things I'm really focusing on. And you know, there's reasons to do these things because you get currencies that fuel other mechanics in the game, right? I get we'll just see how it plays out when we're actually in game, right? But I still feel like strongboxes might be something that I skip, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they've really amped it up.
Now, let's talk about visibility of effects. Many maps had too much clutter, preventing effects on the ground from rendering, causing you to be unable to see and dodge them. We both changed the level of clutter on some maps and has changed some effects to make sure that they are always visible.
So what's interesting here is it sounds like what they're doing is they're like turning the slider for the amount of things on the ground, like the grasses and the flowers and shrubbery and all that stuff. It seems like they're just like by default ramping that down so that there's less things in the way of the ground effects. They also mentioned the fact that they're going to be ramping up the visual clarity of some of those ground effects. And a lot of this really just also leads into the whole one-shot thing where you're gutting one shot on a regular basis. And sometimes you have no clue what happened because of that lack of clarity due to the amount of stuff in the map itself, but then also the effect of the mechanic that ends up getting you one shot.
In addition, elemental explosion effects have had visibility improved. Stick around for longer before they explode, and disappear without exploding if a rare monster dies.
So the elemental explosions that trigger off of enemies, it seems like you're going to have more time to respond to them basically, and they should no longer blow up after the enemy dies, which did happen on occasion.
Now we've also increased the zoom level on the Atlas.
Oh, that's so huge, dude. The Atlas map was just way too zoomed in, even as far back as you could get. And after you've been playing for a while and you've been mapping for a while, like I would be clicking and dragging the map trying to get to the other side of it or to check parts of it because I don't remember like where everything is, especially as I move in different directions. And it would take forever to get across the map. Now that that zoom out is really big. I mean, just like look at that. Look at how much further out that is. And it's still perfectly fine. Like you can still make out all the little details. You can still see where stuff is. So great change, dude.
Done a pass on various terrain collision issues in many maps.
So that's been a big thing as well. I've really noticed, I think especially playing my Gemling Legionnaire. I haven't really brought this up in other videos, but yes, I have myself noticed issues with like just randomly getting stuck in spots where it seems like I shouldn't get stuck. And it seems like they've been aware of that and they're actually going to be fixing that. That's great to hear.
We've also improved the load times of opening the world map and Atlas panel.
You know, this was a really big problem at launch. It literally took like somewhere between 4 and 5 seconds every time you open the map for the map to actually populate. I haven't noticed it nearly as much recently, but it seems like it's still an issue that they wanted to address, so that's good to hear.
And we also now show the biome of a map on the hover for it.
Oh, that's really good, right.
For other in-game content systems, we're focusing on getting all the rewards in line with what they should be. For Delirium, we recently fixed a bug which caused Delirium monsters to just not spawn after the starting part. And we've also buffed the rate of simulacrums dropping by 20%, to make it more in line with the rate of finding the expedition and ritual bosses.
That's awesome. That's great. That's a good change.
For ritual, we've made omens now appear in the ritual tribute window 60% more often.
Oh my god, that's huge! The reason this is such a big deal is because omens are actually playing into having like more deterministic crafting, having more control over the outcome of crafting that you're doing with items. And it just seemed like there weren't a lot of omens. You weren't getting a lot of omens. And evidently now we're going to be seeing omens pop up a lot more often in the actual ritual reward screen themselves.
Now, one of the major concerns that we're often seeing is that getting to play Pinnacle content just takes too long.
Yep.
And that when you do finally get there, you only get one attempt and don't get a chance to learn the
boss.
boss.
Please.
In order to address these concerns, we're making the following changes.
What changes? Tell me.
First, we're making the Citadel spawn closer to the center of the Atlas.
Oh, you can see it.
We've also added an effect so you can see them in the fog of war from further away.
Oh my god, dude, that is so huge. So now, instead of following crazy fan theories about how like the dead corpses on towers are pointing in the direction of where the citadels are, or like the way the grass sways in the wind points in the direction of the nearest citadel, now there's going to be more citadels. They're going to be spawning nearer to the center when you start. You know, it doesn't matter so much now unless you're jumping in for the first time, but when a new league starts, when you get into mapping, they're going to be closer to the starting point in the mapping. And then also there are beams of light that you can see through the fog, which they're literally just showing you where the citadels are. There's no more guessing. You won't know ahead of time which citadel you're moving towards, but at least you'll know you're moving towards a citadel. Now, I don't know if this is going to address or not, if you know, it still takes 200 hours and you haven't seen a copper citadel yet. Like, that could still happen, but I'm guessing not, because if you're now able to beeline it to citadels, if you choose to do so, if you're trying to get the pieces to do the Pinnacle boss fight, now you will at least be able to beeline it to every nearest citadel and get a better chance at getting the one citadel you're still missing after 200 hours. No exaggeration, by the way. Almost 300 hours now at this point. Still haven't found my last citadel, so can't wait for this patch to go through.
To address the problem of only having one attempt, on the Arbiter of Ash, you will now get up to 6 respawn attempts.
Yes!
Respawns can only be triggered by the person who put in the keys, and everyone on your party will be respawned at the same time. Leaving the map still forfeits your attempt, so you'll still need to fight the boss with the build you walked into the map with. Higher difficulties of the boss will lower the number of respawn attempts you get, but you should know the mechanics of the fight by then, right?
Dude, I cannot believe it with these developers. They're literally addressing like all of the major complaints that I've had in all the videos that I've done post-release, and they're doing them in like, they're just doing exactly what I would like dream up that they would be doing. It's so fantastic. We're gonna have now 6 attempts to do the Pinnacle boss fights instead of playing for several hundred hours or spending that large amount of currency to buy all the materials needed to go to the boss fight. And then if you are wanting to experience it organically and not look up on YouTube or not watch a Twitch stream to see how someone else has done the fight to learn all the mechanics, now you actually get attempts to do it. So you can go in, you do an attempt, oh, you died to that one mechanic that looks like you should be safe, but you're not safe, it was a one shot, too bad, and then, you know, start back over, see you in a few more weeks. No, you're gonna have 6 attempts now. 6 attempts. Now that attempt number, as I said, is going to be lowered as you move up to the higher difficulties, but of course the idea is that by the time you move up to those higher difficulties, you will know the mechanics by then. You will have gone through maybe at least a few attempts of having 6 respawns for that fight. This is great. This is so good.
Another thing that players have noticed is that there are less keys from Faradin Citadels on the market, and thought that it was because the Citadel spawns less often. It turns out though that this is just because the boss kills players more often than the others. We've made a few changes to that boss to bring it in line with the other bosses. Okay, so it seems like there's going to be more keys from that encounter on the market because that boss was particularly deadly and more players were dying, so they weren't getting the key at the end of it as a result of that. Essentially, they're making that boss fight easier so that people are dying less often, so that more keys for that fight will be available in the market. Fantastic. A lot of people have reported that many of our unique items are feeling underwhelming.
This is true.
Uniques are often designed to be build enabling at high levels, even if they're low-level uniques. But we realized that we do need to make sure that more uniques feel powerful when you first get them at low levels too. In this patch, we are buffing a lot of uniques.
Oh, damn.
These changes should make finding uniques at lower levels a lot more fun. and makes subsequent character playthroughs more fun too, when you have some great uniques to use.
Yes, it's been the case that a majority of the uniques, I can only think of like a handful of uniques that actually I'm ever excited about seeing them drop. Most of the time a unique drops, I'll try to put it in my stash. I'll be like, you already have that. I'll compare the stats. I'll put the one with the higher roll stats in there. And then I'll go on the PoE2 marketplace and I'll see, is anyone buying this unique in the roll ranges that I have? And inevitably, 99% of the time, every unique that I have is like being sold for 1 exalt. I'm like, that's not even worth the time for me to list it. So they're bumping these. So let's see some of these changes. Like, I'm really excited about this. Like, holy crap, already, just at first glance, look at this. So the black braid fur plate, it's going from 5 strength, 13 inch, 58 stun threshold, armor applies to elemental damage, to 48 armor, 5 strength, 12 intellect, 10% to all elemental resistances, then the stun threshold, and then the armor applies to elemental damage. All right, this one had 59 max life, 81 stun threshold, 250% melee physical damage taken reflected to the attacker. Now they've added 90 maximum life, 94 stun threshold, cannot evade enemy attacks, 250% melee physical damage reflected to the attacker, and then regenerate 5% life per second while surrounded. All of these are getting like massive buffs. This is absolutely unbelievable. Now it makes me wish that I held on to all of those uniques that I've since salvaged because they were total garbage and they weren't even worth selling. Like, I can't, this is awesome, dude. These are all insanely better already.
We're also changing a few other things to make finding rares better at higher levels too. First, we're changing mod weightings a bit to make sure that there are less bad mods.
So does that mean that I'm not going to be constantly getting like plus light radius on plus light radius on my boots or something? I mean, I'll be interested to see how that plays out, but yeah, it is the case right now that I think there's like one instance of me actually crafting a piece of gear that was worthwhile to use. The rest of the 300 hours that I've played, and I've tried to do a lot of crafting, especially in the first 100 hours, I wasn't trading at that point. Like, I didn't touch the market. I said I'm not interested in spending half my playtime on the website doing trading back and forth and stuff and looking up values every time a new item drops for me to see if it's worth selling, right? So I wasn't trading at all for those like first 100 hours. I was doing it entirely crafting, and most of it was total garbage. So hopefully this means we're going to be getting less garbage if they're changing the weighted values so that you're less likely to get the trash tier mods. They're still going to have trash tier mods that can show up, but it should be happening less often, according to what he's saying here.
Another change we're making is to make it so that socketables such as runes can now be overwritten with another
Oh my
socketable.
god, dude. Yes, they listen. They listen. Oh my god, dude. That is massive. So here's the biggest thing that I've been running into in this game is I would find an upgrade, whether it dropped, whether I crafted it, or that was rare, as I just mentioned, but I would find an upgrade, but I couldn't put it on because it would completely nuke my resistance balance, because my resistances were all over the place. I got some resistances on my belt, I got some on my boots, I got some on whatever, my rings. So I'd get a new one of those things, and then one of those pieces had like 40% lightning resist on it, and I replaced it, and the item that I'm replacing it with doesn't have 40%. And so I would be looking at my stuff like, okay, so I can't use, I've got this thing that is, in every other aspect, it is a total upgrade for my character. Increases my defenses, resistances aside, increases, say, my energy shield and my evasion or whatever, and my armor, and it increases my damage output. I've got an attribute stacker, so like a great attribute rolls, high tier, whatever. But then, because I'm down from 75% lightning resist to 35% lightning resist, it's like I can't put this on. So the point being, every time I found or bought a new piece of gear that was an upgrade, it would inevitably screw up my resistances somehow, and then I couldn't put that on until I found a second piece of gear to balance out the resistance loss of the first piece of gear, and that could all be alleviated by overriding runes, because if I lose this resist, right, I could just rebalance my runes to add the resistances in other pieces of gear, whatever, you know what I mean? This is, it's so huge that we can override runes now. That is such a amazing quality of life change. Thank you so much. Unbelievable. Love it.
Now, as we continue to play, we still find many balance anomalies with specific monsters or bosses that can be nasty if you encounter them. This patch contains a pass adjusting a large number of those monsters and bosses. We'll save the full list for the patch notes, but there are a significant number of changes here that should address many cases where monsters or bosses felt too hard in certain circumstances. Here are a few examples to get a taste of what kind of changes you can expect. The Silver Fist Commander roll now does a lot less damage. Plague Bearer's Detonate Dead can no longer be used from off-screen and has better telegraphing.
Yeah, exactly. The problem here is that this guy would be off. You wouldn't see him. You wouldn't know anything was happening. He would be off screen on the edge of the black bars or the corner of your monitor. He would be casting Detonate Dead, and you would be killing enemies, and he would explode a corpse under your feet, and you would die instantly without any warning. That's exactly what was happening. So now apparently that mob cannot cast Detonate Dead unless you can see him. So you still have to pay attention. He might be in the corner of your screen, raising up his hands, getting ready to blow up the corpse under your feet and knock you out of the map into oblivion. But now that is no longer going to be you're not going to. It's so unbelievable that was even, I mean, there was no counterplay. There was nothing you could do because you couldn't see this guy casting, and then you would just blow up and you'd be like, okay, there goes my map.
Forsaken miners throw less grenades, have improved visuals, and deal less damage. And Lost Men Zealots can no longer meteor you from off-screen either, as well as many other changes just like those.
It just seems like across the board, they've made things feel less cheap, and they've kind of toned back the damage. You should be dying less often. That's all of the changes that they've mentioned here have been like nerfs to these enemies to stop you from dying in cheesy ways.
And Lost Men Zealots can no longer meteor you from off-screen either, as well as many other changes just like those. One of the big issues for players on consoles is that the web-based item filter system is currently not working. This means that they can't use item filters like the PC users can.
Console.
For 0.1.1, we'll be enabling the same system that PoE 1 has, which allows you to subscribe to item filters on the website. For now, this will be done on the PoE 1 website to allow us to get this feature out as fast as possible. Later on, we'll improve the user experience of this and put it on the Path of Exile 2 website.
So this is a great change. Like, I'm happy to see that they're adding the ability to enable filters. It obviously would be more ideal and better if this stuff could be in-game, but if you are a console player of Path of Exile, you're going to be able to go onto the website and so basically you say, this is the filter that I want, which just baseline, if I'm going to recommend anything, Neversink, look up Neversink's filters. He was at the top of the list that they were showing here. I've been using these filters for the past several weeks now, and they've been fantastic. They highlight all the most important stuff. They make they make sure you're never going to be missing divine orbs or something. It's just a great filter. It also, as you progress up and move into higher tier maps and higher levels, you're going to be seeing less junk that's just never going to be valuable because it's like lower tiers of items that aren't going to have the higher tier rolls, so they're just like not worth your time picking up, basically. I think ideally for the console player experience, they could do this stuff in game instead of having to go to the website, right? But at least now there is going to be an option for you. So you go to the website, you'll subscribe to one of these filters, and it's going to be linked up to your console account, and then you will have that filter applied while you're playing on console. So that's nice.
This patch also contains a bunch of other smaller changes and bug fixes that I'm sure you guys will appreciate, like buffing armor and scavenged plating, showing the number of uses left in your charms, as well as an effect when they trigger.
That's a really nice change, yep.
The song of the Exiles.
Fixing the music that Una was supposed to play in town. And plenty of other little fixes and improvements throughout the game. Now, we have a huge amount of much more meta-shifting changes that we know we want to make. And one of the best things about having the game in early access with the endgame is that we now have a much better idea of where we want character power to be and what the balance of bosses and monsters should be relative to that. But those types of changes are going to have to wait until we are ready to make a new league with a new economy for people to play in. That's still a little while away yet, but in the meantime, we'll be continuing to identify things that are causing frustration and try and address them.
Okay, so that is pretty big. Basically, he's just confirmed here that class balance is pretty much going to stay as is until they are ready to start up a fresh league. I'm going to be really curious how soon they're interested in doing that, like whether we're talking 3 or 6 months from now, or whether we're talking next month about them starting up a new league, which, by the way, you will, from what I understand, you will still be able to play your existing characters on the current league. There's going to be like just a default league that's everyone gets shifted to, and then if you want to play the new league, you can, or you can choose not to regardless, right? So I guess for the time being, like what is Spark Archmages or whatever, or the class that I'm familiar with, the Gemling Legionnaire, Tempest Flurry, like all that stuff is staying as is right now, and that's where player power is. Interested that he's not actually discussing like the tempo that they're aiming for, like what level of play are they expecting at the top end? Is the fully kitted out stat stacking gemling legionnaire that's just completely blowing up screens, or where some monks are, or where some of the mage classes are? Is that what they're aiming for? Is it closer to like warrior level of play right now? Where do they want the high end to be? Is the high end right now out of line with what they're aiming for? That's just a big question that we're gonna have to wait and see. But for the time being, I mean, this was like 10 out of 10, honestly. Like they addressed not everything, but they addressed a majority of what I was hoping they addressed. And I think the biggest thing is they're directly taking on some of the major quality of life things that I wanted to see improvements to. I mean, this is amazing. Like, I'm so excited. Now I'm gonna keep playing Path of Exile 2. I can't believe it. I am pumping the brakes. We're gonna have some other content coming out of the channel. I promise you, right? We got some actually exciting stuff planned for the next couple of weeks here. But when it comes to PoE 2, man, I'm loving it, having a blast, and we'll be continuing playing. This was an amazing update. Really excited to see this patch go through later this week. Evidently, patch 0.1.1 with all of these changes. Cannot wait. That's going to do it for this video, though. Thanks, guys, for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, here's a good question. What else do you want them to change besides everything that's been addressed here? Anything else that's kind of pressing that you guys think they should be looking into? Let me know. Leave your thoughts below. All right, that's it for today. Thanks, as always. See you next time. Take it easy.